Warm welcome, Professor Brad Rodu of United States, somebody who's known, famous all over the world for his scientific work, and also some years ago a frequent visitor to Sweden due to partly the Swedish smokeless tobacco innovation Snus. Could you make a presentation of yourself to the viewers?
Well, I was trained as an oral and maxillofacial pathologist. I spent 25 years at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, and in that time, I saw countless cancer patients who got sick and died from smoking-related diseases. I knew that they had to have a better option to quit besides complete nicotine and tobacco abstinence. I was an expert on oral pathology and smokeless tobacco. And when I discovered that smokeless tobacco has a fraction of the health risks of smoking, I decided in 1994 to make that case in the medical literature. And so I started advocating that smokers who were unable or unwilling to quit switch to a smokeless product. Now, I'll also say that it led me to Sweden because I looked at lung cancer all over the world back in the mid-1990s. And I found that Swedish men had an incredible record. Ever since World War II, Swedish men have had the lowest lung cancer rates, which means the lowest smoking rates in the entire developed world. I knew I had to get to Sweden. And
was it perhaps you, Professor, that invented the expression, the Swedish Experience, which is even used by the FDA?
I'm not sure, but I certainly promoted the Swedish Experience in the early 2000s after spending a sabbatical there with one of Sweden's most accomplished and most prestigious physicians, Kjell Asplund. He went on, after our collaboration, he went on to be the director of the Health Institute in Sweden. I'm sorry, I don't know the Swedish name.
That doesn't matter.
But he was phenomenal. He accepted me as a collaborator and a co-author, and we published a series of manuscripts. I was introduced to Kjell by the prestigious Carl Fagerström.
He's a great guy.
He absolutely is. He's one of my closest colleagues and collaborators as well. And Carl introduced me to Kjell in order to find out why Swedes had these low lung cancer rates. Kjell had a WHO data set that we used to understand what was going on in Sweden. And it was interesting, Ben, because at that time when I went over to Sweden and started lecturing to Swedish physicians and others about how snus replaced cigarette smoking, they couldn't believe it. Nobody believed me. They thought I was telling them a story. And I had to explain it with the Swedish data. And so eventually this caught on, and now everybody understands what's happened in Sweden.
Data is big in Sweden, and we have, I think, 9 cohort studies expanding like 35 years with about 600,000 people. There was also an interesting study that came last year from the Karolinska Institute, where they used these cohorts amounting to almost 500,000 people, where they concluded that normal use of snus actually reduces the relative risk of oral cancer with 35% as compared to non-users. So there is so many, how do you say, misconceptions out there in the world. And one of the greatest ones, I guess, is that people, even physicians, some believe that nicotine is causing cancer. And I know you have been very direct about just that. You used to compare it to caffeine, was it?
Absolutely. I've got a slide from 1995 presentation where I put the products, nicotine and caffeine. You know, they're not the same. They're not the same drugs, but they have similar properties. And one of which, the most important of which, is they don't cause any diseases that plague smokers or plague anybody else. So that's the key here. We need to start treating nicotine like caffeine as an acceptable consumer drug when it's consumed in a safe manner.
Exactly. Well, for the viewers, unless somebody doesn't recognize me, I'm Bengt Wiberg, a Snus inventor, patent holder, and a tobacco harm reduction advocate. And I'm the co-founder of the international Snus community called EUforsnus. We have members from more than 100 nations, all adult men and women, where almost 80% of them are former smokers who have managed to quit smoking by help of snus and also vaping. I have asked a question, and the question is, how dangerous is snus? And I have asked it to Dr. Lars Ramström and to Professor Mareva Glover from New Zealand. If you would put on a scale where smoking is 100% risk, where would you place the use of a Swedish snus type products?
Well, it's important because people really don't understand either relative risk or absolute risk. And it's also important to know that no product is perfectly safe. Right. You know, nature walks, potato chips, or anything else that humans do or consume is going to be perfectly safe.
I heard if you drink too much water, it could actually kill you. I don't know how many liters though.
Well, there's no question that water can kill you. We know that from the flooding that's going on right now.
Yes.
And the other problem is it's almost impossible to prove that there's no effect, because it's impossible to prove a negative. What I can say with absolute assurance is that compared to smoking, the use of snus over a career, over a long term, has a tiny fraction of the risk. You know, I used to say 2%, but I can tell you, I think it's far less than that now. Yeah. There's been no good evidence that snus has any major impact. And you know why? I told you that hardly anybody in Sweden knew about snus and how it had impacted smoking when I got there. There's a reason for that, Bent. And that is everybody in Sweden knows someone or has a family member who uses snus, and they've never gotten sick. Yeah. So nobody ever thought about it in those terms in Sweden. And it was like a revolution to learn that, oh my gosh, snus has this impact. And, you know, it's sort of like if seat belts had appeared in Sweden from Volvo. And nobody had ever seen them before.
And recommended by a U.S. professor, Brad Rodu.
Yes, exactly. Oh, and you know, I got a lot of reaction was, well, he's an American and here he is over here telling us about Sweden. But I learned so much in that sabbatical, and Sweden impacted me so much that it was just a marvelous experience. And, you know, one tobacco critic We would call them an anti-tobacco crusader here.
Yeah.
Threatened that if I was able to go to Sweden and complete my sabbatical, that she would publicly criticize everybody. And it was at that point that Dr. Asplund said that I knew you must come to Sweden. So he was prepared for all of the reaction to my work.
I was speaking of the Swedish experience. I was invited. I actually got an international award at the Global Tobacco Nicotine Forum in 2017 for most exciting newcomer to the industry due to eliminating the familiar stinging on the gum that is off-putting for many smokers. But I also had a chance to put a question live to Director Mitch Zeller of the FDA Tobacco, and I asked him, "What are your thoughts on the Swedish experience of snus?" And I believe people told me, there were people from all over the world here, that was the first time the FDA actually said something positive about an alternative to cigarettes. And Mitch Zeller said the FDA absolutely understands the Swedish experience due to massive epidemiological evidence of a whole nation. And that was very, very pleasing for me, a newbie in tobacco harm reduction. But I'm a former smoker who quit thanks to snus and occasional vaping sometimes during Saturdays when the craving is a little bit high. But I mean, a simple thing like if the World Health Organization or the FDA or the European Union would officially acknowledge that nicotine is not what is causing cancer, lung cancer, oral cancer, whatever, by just acknowledging that, I mean, couldn't the misconceptions that 7 out of 10 US doctors and only it was you, I read your survey that you were quoting the FDA, you said that about 13% of US adults believe that smokeless tobacco is actually less harmful than smoking.
No, I don't think there's any question that if we got buy-in from all of the authorities, that this would progress tremendously faster than it has so far. I think there's hope with FDA because FDA has taken steps with respect to General Snus, with respect to IQOS, and it now has pending applications from thousands of e-cigarettes and other snus and smokeless products. I think the FDA could take some steps, although I think progress will be real slow. I think the UK situation with vaping being endorsed by government authorities is going to help tremendously.
Yeah.
But I don't see a lot of optimism with respect to WHO and a lot of other authorities. I think we're in for a long haul there.
For me and all of us in who really burns for tobacco harm reduction, it doesn't really matter what helps you quit smoking. My wife is smoking, but she don't. Once my own product comes out, then she has promised to really try because she don't like the stinging sensation. But looking at like nicotine replacement therapies like nicotine gum, nicotine patches, the thing in my opinion, that is missing there is that the pleasure is gone. It's just the nicotine. While snus, e-cigarettes, cigarettes for that matter, has an amount of pleasure, well-being from the habit, I guess.
No, there's no question about that. We have to we have to become comfortable with the idea that nicotine and tobacco can be safe consumer products that satisfy and meet people's needs for those products. I explained I'm in the process of putting up a series of interviews that I gave in the mid-1990s. And I said at that time that the availability of snus and other smoke-free products does not in any way interfere with somebody who wants to use nicotine gum and patch.
No.
They're still there. They can still be used if they satisfy people. But that 93% failure rate on the part of those products that are promoted by all of the authorities as being safe and effective is a travesty. And that's something we have to get across to smokers and everybody else, that these products can satisfy.
Containing the same nicotine you will find in a nicotine pouch, for example, the modern cousin of snus.
Yes.
A theoretical question. What would happen with smoking prevalence if, for example, FDA or WHO proclaimed wide and publicly that it's the smoke, the combustion, that causes cancer and premature deaths, and not the nicotine in itself?
Well, I don't think there's any question that we would, transform this slow decline in cigarette smoking and make it run basically down to near zero within our lifetimes. And otherwise, it's going to take a long time. Yeah. Now, in the US, we've almost done that with children smoking. The high school smoking rate in this country is down around 5% or under. So we've convinced kids that smoking isn't a good thing. And so we need to help the adults who are over 48 years of age, the ones that are currently at risk for developing some of these serious diseases. We need to help them quit, and because the future generations are not likely to be smoking at any great percentage, which is really exciting.
2 years ago, it came from the Norwegian Statistical Central Bureau, which is a government body, that female smoking among 16 to 24-year-old Norwegian women was down to 1%. 1%. But something helped them, obviously, because 14% of this category is using snus, but the cancer rates have dropped dramatically in Norway.
Well, it's real exciting to know that Norway has reproduced the Swedish experience, especially more recently. It's more evidence that these products can work for smokers and work against smoking. And I hope that with the UK leaving the EU, that we'll see rapid development there. I'm real encouraged by that. We see Japan and IQOS being a remarkable story. And IQOS, in fact, in 60 other markets being, we see IQOS and similar products replacing cigarettes. And so there are some hopeful areas that give us good evidence.
Great. I have a question from the sort of hardcore original snus with tobacco Swedish snus community. And as for myself, I love original snus. I mean that which basically looks like there might be viewers who never seen a snus. Here's a Norwegian snus for you. The first one, actually. Oh, here we go. It's a little tea bag looking pouch that you place under your upper or your lower lip because it's spit free. But anyway, there's a huge market growth for these tobacco-free nicotine pouch. Some persons I know wonder what will happen to original snus when nicotine pouches are mentioned as possibly safer than snus and tobacco-free. We both know that tobacco that is produced with quality standards are very, very low risk products as compared to smoking and, for example, Asian smokeless tobacco. Do you see, what would you like to tell these snus community friends? Will snus, original snus, disappear?
Well, my answer to that, Bengt, is that, you know, and this is a little bit uncomfortable for people to hear, but, you know, back in the 1950s and 60s, before the impact of smoking really became common knowledge, we had somewhere between 40 and 50% of Americans and other developed countries using cigarettes. So somewhere in that range is the prevalence of the population for which tobacco and nicotine provide benefits. And so as we move toward a more realistic and scientific realization of tobacco use, we will have plenty of consumers. And then it's up to the free market to find their way, find the way that people wish to consume these products. Snus, other smokeless tobaccos, nicotine pouches, vapor, heat not burn, all of these products will ultimately have to compete. But I don't see necessarily any of these products disappearing, because there will always be traditional users and even new users as the products are more acceptable to the general population. I know that's really difficult to hear, but we are talking about the reality that nicotine and tobacco can be consumed in a vastly safer manner.
Right. So EUforsnus followers, we believe snus will be around, original snus will be around for a long, long time.
Yes.
I asked Professor Carl Fagerström on why the European Union does not end the snus ban in the European Union, especially in lieu of the epidemiology evidence of the Swedish Experience, the FDA modified risk tobacco product decision, the global burden of disease study, which found that snus and snuff has no elevated relative risk at all when used. So there's tons of science, and Professor Carl Fagerström answered, to unban a ban is psychologically very difficult. It means admitting you were wrong. What is your thoughts on the European Union snus ban?
I couldn't agree with Carl more in that manner. We're seeing that here in the US as well. It's rare for people to make a transition to an opinion opposite what they once held. That is the basis for a lot of the continued resistance to tobacco harm reduction, not only in the EU and the WHO, but here as well. I'm 100% in agreement with him.
The EUforsnus movement is one of many organizations with the consumers doing, how do you say, non-paid work for tobacco harm reduction, and the European tobacco harm reduction advocates at ETHRA made a huge study survey involving some 38,000 nicotine consumers in Europe. And one of the amazing things here was that of those who were smokers, 31%, or perhaps it was 33% of smokers would actually be willing to try Swedish snus if it was available in the European Union. And doing the mathematics here, we have more than 100 million daily smokers in the European Union. So 64% of those wish to quit smoking. And if you take 31% of the ones wish to quit smoking, we are talking about several millions of people who might, try snus if it was available. Personally, I think it's very shameful that the ban still exists, while dangerous oral tobacco products from Far East and Africa are allowed.
Bengt, you've been talking about smokers in the EU, and I couldn't agree more with you. But the real tragedy, as you just referred to, is the fact that some of these are going to be dead smokers in the next few years if they don't get access to safer products. And so that's the real tragedy, is that people will needlessly die years before they should, because they were unable to get access to these vastly safer products. It is a tragedy.
What is your message to the adult men and women following our Snusrevolution podcast and that supports the international EUforsnus movement?
Viral spread is so important. We have this social media now that can transmit messages. I would also ask each and every one of your supporters and your members to reach out to 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 smokers that they know in their family or among their friends. We need to continue to try to get this information out there so that people can make choices for themselves.
I have a personal experience, and that is that scientific publications are not as easy to read as your daily newspaper. So it would be great, I think, if somebody could make the science more understandable for ordinary people. And you, Professor Brad Rodu, you are one of them, because you have a blog that you have been running for a long time. Can you please tell the viewers a little bit about it?
Well, that's true. Back in 2009, I was frustrated by the misinformation coming from otherwise respected researchers. And so I started a blog specifically to deal with tobacco misinformation. And a lot of that comes in the form of published manuscripts. My blog is easy. It's my last name, Rodu, R-O-D-U, Tobacco Truth. And through my activities, I think I've opened up a window so that interested people can come to the blog, put in a search term, and find out. I don't just write opinions. I put lots of links into my blogs to the main sources of material so that people can go there and verify what I'm saying and validate the case I'm making. So I think it's been a good source for people interested in this area. I'm glad you brought it up, Bengt, because one of the problems with my blog is there's not a lot of people who know about it. So I'm always eager to get the word out that this can be.
We will put a link to your blog under
please.
this video and also in the text, because
Please.
I think it's a fantastic blog. I rarely miss an episode, so to say.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Professor Brad Rodu. It's been a pleasure. We have met around the world. We met at first time at the Snuscon 2017 in St. Louis, Missouri.
Yes, yes.
And I think Chad Jones of snubby.com is doing a fantastic job reviewing snus, bringing you into the picture, the science, and that this could be a very, very good alternative to smoking with less risk. We also met, I believe, at the Global Tobacco Nicotine Forum, as well as the Global Forum on Nicotine in Warsaw during 2 years.
Yes.
And it's always a pleasure to talk with you, and you're always very friendly and take your time with us ordinary consumer people.
Well, it's great to have this conversation with you, Bengt, and also to get the word out about how snus can really save lives.
We will do our best.
The more products we have, the more likely it is that smokers will make the switch. They'll find a product. So I am completely supportive of a broad palette of products of all kinds, of all flavors, and of all stinging sensations or not. I'm all for it, because the free market will prevail if anti-tobacco crusaders allow the market to do so.
So this brings me to my last question, where I know we are in agreement, and that is the importance of flavors, whether it's in e-cigarettes or heated tobacco or snus or moist snuff, whatever, or nicotine pouches. It is very important because we have to do in any ways possible to give smokers a smorgasbord. You know that word? Smorgasbord?
Oh, yeah.
It's a Swedish invention.
Yep.
The more, the better, if we can move down the risk continuum.
Yeah, the flavor wars have been portrayed as the kids' issue, especially here in the US. But I think a more accurate and a bigger kind of looking at the bigger universe, this attack against flavors is simply a way for anti-tobacco crusaders to remove some of the enjoyment in using these products. You know, they anti-tobacco activists many years ago said that we must make all tobacco products taste like
yeah, beep beep.
beep, yeah, because that's the way to get people to quit. And I think that's what really underpins a lot of these flavor wars. We can't have a product that's enjoyable to use. That's simply not going to happen. Again, it's part of this prohibitionist approach that ultimately will be defeated. but how long is anybody's guess.
What we are seeing now, it's like if all wines and beers had to taste like water.
Exactly. I've made that case that we can't have flavored alcohol products because that allows people to enjoy them. And one thing's for sure, the prohibitionist movement in the US sort of gave alcohol a pass. I'm starting to see pushback against alcohol use. In fact, there's, I think, a headline today about how many diseases alcohol causes. So it's not entirely out of risk, but this war against tobacco and especially against flavors, it has to go away.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor. It's been a great interview, and I hope I will see you personally again at the next GFN, and I hope to see you there. And if you ever come to Sweden, you are welcome to our summer house. We will enjoy Swedish crayfish, pickled herring, and shrimps and other Swedish delicacies.
I look forward to it.
All right.
Very much, Ben.
Thank you very much.